Hi there, welcome. I'm Ross from Hive Business, and I'm really pleased to welcome today my fellow director, Luke, who's the marketing director of Hive Marketing. Welcome, Luke.
Hi.
And also, absolute pleasure to welcome Tracy Stewart from NBS Trading. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you.
It's all right. We've all kindly agreed to open up today to get a little bit of a bearing on how things are going so far in 2026. From my personal perspective, I can definitely kind of observe a kind of a little bit of a shifting in various elements for dental practices. So I wanted to unpick it a little bit and get your esteemed opinions on what you're seeing and how practices can potentially react to things, if that's okay.
Yeah, I guess
No.
from a marketing side, we're seeing still seeing demand. There's
Yeah.
probably a slower journey for some treatments from inquiry to treatment take up, just because people are worried about cost and how they fit that in with their financing. But having said that, we've run two very successful open days already this year. One for implants, which had an amazing take up, and
Yeah.
one for Invisalign, which was a record-breaking open day for that practice. So there's definitely still demand there. I think
Yeah.
the complexities are around how you run your marketing, making sure that you're
Yeah.
positioned correctly for your audiences, not sounding like every other practice.
Yeah.
You have a team that efficiently handles every inquiry and keeps the service levels up really high. But yeah, from my perspective, still demand, but it's how you use your marketing channels to
Yeah. Would
get
you
best
would you say
exposure.
that's sort of 100% across the board then? All practices that you can see are doing as well as or better than the end of 2025? Or is it more
No,
winners and more
no, there's
losers?
definitely, I guess so. Talking about demand, I'm seeing demand coming through, but all practices are, yeah, every practice is slightly different. They have
Yeah.
different audiences that are inquiring, and it's how they deal with them, and what type of treatment they're after as well. But I would say the demand's there. It's
Yeah.
about how efficient you are, the quality of the inquiries that is coming through, which is why you
Yeah.
need a good marketing channel mix because they all provide different levels of kind of quality from an
Yeah.
inquiry. And then it's about decent follow-up. But most importantly, I think one thing that I know you work on very closely with practices with Dan Ross is about
Hmm.
connecting the inquiry to the marketing channel to see what's working, what's driving quality.
Yeah. I'd probably provide a bit of a sweeping statement there and say most of the time it is pretty poor in being able to kind of understand and track what has been delivered to them from not just a marketing agency, any lead or inquiry with the practice and the ability to just monitor that situation. It's probably on average, I'd say probably I'd give it about a 70% mark. And Tracy, I get your view on that as well, actually. Like what in terms of kind of practices having the right infrastructure to capture, the demand from new patient inquiries. What's your view? Do you share my sentiment there or?
Yeah, but also, I mean, there's so much going on. It's like, I think you probably have to keep me to some structure here, Ross, because in some practices it's amazing, and some practices it's a complete mess. So when you're talking about, connecting it, somebody might have purchased a CRM system,
Yeah,
and then they've got a marketing agency that they're doing the leads with, but one's not plugged into the other. It's almost
totally.
like people seeing it like an Xbox, plug and play, and
Yeah.
there's so much more to it that it's not fit for purpose. So you've got to have everything set up and talking to each other to even stand a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I literally agree with that, and I think if I can provide a bit of backdrop to this, because I don't think this element has got any worse. I think it's always been pretty average, but dental practices could kind of make do previously. I just think there's kind of more financial pressures now. Patients are maybe a bit slower in signing up, saying yes. There's maybe sort of more credit problems and them agreeing to payment plans, and so there's this kind of, well, hang on, there's a little bit of white space in the diary now. I'm just going to kind of go and look at my marketing agency and say, why, hang on, why are things kind of going wrong?
Yeah,
And I think there's that kind of, there's a danger, there's this kind of abdication of the problem, I suppose, because it's like, well, my white space is not, it's not full because, Luke has, or, the marketing agency hasn't delivered me the right kind of leads, which is just a massive disconnect. I think,
yeah. I
even
think there's a
spiritually, yeah.
yeah, I think there's going back to what Tracy was saying about the plug and play. You mentioned something when we were just talking earlier, Tracy, about the messaging. All these CRMs have nurture messaging and sequences in them that help connect and bring someone through the journey. But actually, everything goes back to the positioning of the practice, what the brand is, what the positioning is, what the messaging is. And if none of that is consistent between how the team talk to patients and how they follow up, how the text or WhatsApp or emails go out, and they're just not appropriate for that audience or that treatment, then the trust isn't there. And that doesn't help the conversion as well. So you're right, everything has to be connected, but the tone of voice and language used needs to be consistent throughout.
I think the
I
other
always
thing that's
remember.
really
Go on.
interesting. Sorry, I
No,
was
no,
just
no,
going
you
to
go
say
for it.
you picked on something that's tone. And when we're talking about communication, so much is tone, but a lot of these CRM systems, you can't even do a voice note on it. And then coming back to what you're so a separate phone for that. Yeah, because it can't go through the CRM system, otherwise it messes it up. Whether this is going to change, I don't know. And I know that there are reasons for this. Um, but if you haven't even got, if you're doing a Facebook campaign, or what we've seen recently is there's a bot on the actual website, but that hasn't been connected to the CRM system. So a practice has lost
Mm.
tens of thousands of pounds
Oh, wow.
because somebody in the practice or somebody somewhere hasn't connected that there's a problem.
Is it that, I mean, you raise an important point. Is it fair? Where does the kind of the responsibility, is it fair that we expect the TCO or the sales manager or the front of house team to kind of know this, I suppose, because it is technological. Won't AI solve all of this, Tracy?
I think AI has got such an important part to play, but I think we're maybe using it in the wrong area. I mean, it can do so much, but you're going to get a transcript of something. We seem to be using it to manage the leads who we want to connect with. So, for example, in the good old days, you'd send out you'd have a nice conversation with somebody, you'd send a welcome letter out, nice headed paper. um, you'd be really The patient would have a good feel for what's going to happen when they come into the practice. Now, don't get me wrong, the smart ones have got a link to their brochure, they've got a welcome video in their CRM system, but some CRM systems don't even allow you to put a video in it, so it's not fit for purpose.
Mm,
Most of them, are, hi dude, let's talk dental implants. I mean, can
mm,
you imagine? You've got this feel on your website and you're expecting a particular connection with that practice, and you've got, hi dude, let's talk dental implants. And I think the other thing as well is when you're talking about white space, there is a lot of white space in people's practices. um, because also the other thing is patients are being quite savvy now. They want a practice, but they don't necessarily want to spend any money. They just want somebody to actually look after them for an emergency. So they're filling up the space with their new patient appointment. And I'm doing a hell of a lot of work now, and particularly with associate dentists, in how they're communicating with patients, because you can't just do an exam, give them a treatment plan, and expect them to buy. As far as they're concerned, they've got a regular dentist now, but you're going to have to connect with that patient if you want them,
mm.
to part with their cash. And remember, these new private patients, the majority of them are NHS patients that can't find an
Yeah,
NHS dentist.
yeah. So kind of
So
reluctant
there's a
private
different breed.
patients. Yeah.
Sorry, Luke.
I'd say so they're kind of labeled reluctant private patients where everything is like, oh, that's going to cost me a lot, or they go into things thinking like that, and that's where those human skills and the sales skills really come in from the associate to build trust and get them over the line. So they know, then they can see the difference between what they were getting elsewhere to what they're getting at your practice.
Also, they've
I
got
know
no
it's
pain, have they? They've got no pain. So,
No,
so why would I spend £500-600 when I've got no pain? That
yeah.
comes to how you're going to communicate with the patient. And that's where you mix technology by having these Loom videos that go out. You've got a
Mhm.
treatment plan, you might put it in the bin by the time you get out of the practice, but the Loom video, you can see how many times that patient's played it.
It's fantastic. It's quite an inconvenient kind of reality, I suppose, and I think that's what 2026 is presenting us, that to achieve a successful patient, we've got to get the right brand and tone of voice at the start. We've got to then attract them to our media, whether that's a website or some dedicated kind of digital channels. We've then got to make sure we then basically answer the phone quick enough when they inquire or respond to the email quick enough. We've got to then delight them when they come into the practice. We then got to do the dentistry in the right kind of manner as well, and communicate with them in a consistent message to what we were previously. And then we've got to kind of say yes and get them kind of credit check. It's definitely different to what it was 10 years ago, isn't it?
I think it's not different, but it is because we were given the same advice over the last 10 years about this is how you should run a successful practice. But the environment has changed that's made it more difficult, I think. Yeah, is what you're alluding to.
Yeah. So, you know, like there's an awkward message there, but I think it's always our kind of philosophy to deliver the reality, I suppose. And if there's bad news, rip the band-aid off kind of quickly. Is this kind of a fair perspective from internal to the practice, Tracy, as well? Would a practice, its team members, its owner be listening to us going again, yeah, but I'm just a really good dentist.
I think it's no different to what it's always been. There are practices that just want the quick fix,
Mhm.
and the quick fix doesn't work. It never has. Yeah. So, I mean, people who come to me, I'm very clear to them that you're probably not going to see any change within 3 to 4 months. So,
Mm.
if we're going to work together, then you have to accept that because we're working with human beings, not bots. Yeah. And at the moment there's a lot of people coming to me, new practices. It's really about culture, and my team just are miserable, but they've got so many things. They've got 50 new leads came in today, they've got another 40 that've got to be followed up. It's unless it's actually set up correctly, it's actually going to actually go wrong very very quickly. So technology is great, but first of all, new technology is going to be changing. A lot of the CRM systems at the moment have taken feedback from practices and they're actually tweaking that. But also, it's really important to be working with a marketing agency that's going to support you. As Luke said, you don't want to be, working with a marketing agency and it's very much, well, we've sent you all these leads. What have you done with them? It's about working together. And that's why there's lots of WhatsApp groups. When Luke's done some work with practices I'm working with, we're in a WhatsApp group and we're communicating because it's important for us all to be successful. And
Yeah.
we might not be
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
one room and we might be different businesses and agencies, but ultimately we've got to be working together, for the success of the practice.
Yeah. Are there any kind of particular internal challenges that you're seeing at the moment? You kind of mentioned the culture and kind of the effectiveness, I suppose, which is absolutely spot on as far as I'm concerned. Are there any consistent challenges that you're seeing, with the people you're working with, that other viewers might be kind of going, "Oh my God, I'm not alone on this."
I think the biggest problem is the volume of leads coming in and them not actually being managed correctly.
Mm.
So, for example, I could, if I was a practice owner and I've actually had to set up a campaign that Luke's running for me, and he sends the leads through, and these leads are working, but they're coming in outside of practice hours, what we're saying is we've got to get to these people quickly.
Yeah.
By the time you've got to them Monday morning, they've probably booked somewhere else. And they're now, as they like to say, the new term is being ghosted. I've learned all this new terminology since 2026 has come in. And you're not getting hold of these people, but you don't know whether they're not interested because no one's
Yeah.
talking to you. So it's very frustrating and it's very stressful on the front of house team because
Mm.
they're being told to follow up these leads
Yeah.
and they're not getting anywhere with it.
I
Yeah,
think
of
that's
course, the
right.
I. Yeah.
Sorry, Ross, you've got the problem. The other problem is the front of house team are also responsible for delivering an excellent service to existing patients. And there's a lot of patients. There'll be times during the day when they've got peak times of patients calling to move appointments or cancel appointments or even just book new appointments. And that puts a challenge on the team as well. So the teams
Yeah.
need to be structured and know their responsibility for how they deal with new inquiries, which can take time on an inquiry on a call because someone might just be exploring pricing and how something happens, and then it doesn't go anywhere, and then you've got lots of people calling. So if you've got good structures, and that's where AI and technology can help with existing patients as well as new patients, which can free the time up for
Mm.
the team, and that could be the front of house team, including TCO or TCOs or just whatever that structure is. But it needs to be recognised that there's
Mm.
quite a lot of pressure on those teams to deal with both sides of the practice, and they have to deliver excellent service on each one.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely
you.
agree.
Yeah,
Mm,
I think you raised such an important point there, and I'll paraphrase it kind of economically, that we've definitely seen, from my perspective, from a financial perspective, 2026 is delivering dental practices which are still very busy places,
mm,
but conversely or contradictorily, they are busy but not profitable. And I think that's really confusing a lot of people. It's,
yeah,
there's, you're looking at the bank statement at the end of the month and it's like it doesn't add up. I've got all these leads. I've got to deal with Luke and Tracy to kind of collaborate and get the leads coming through the system. I've got a big team, 10, dozen, maybe more team members. Hang on, why is my bank statement not getting any larger? And that confusion, I think, is something that's definitely kind of bubbled to the surface, as we've kind of opened up in 2026. And in that sense, I'd say, if you are feeling that, you're not alone. But it's a bit of a kind of call to action, I suppose. So it's very normal to be dealing with all these problems, and it's how we're going to kind of power through this now, and make sure they are busy, thriving, successful places. It's also making your bank balance go up as well. It's an important part.
mm,
The technology though is understanding it's really important. So for example, and I've had to learn all this with the companies that are involved, and they have been really good, but I'm knocking on their door going, no, I don't want a webinar and I don't want a link to this, that and the other. I want a human being to show me how your bloody system works so that I can support practices. So poor old principal goes, have you seen it, Trace? 160 missed calls. What the bloody hell are they doing? But when you actually look into it, actually, 150 of those actually logged off on press one, press two. So it isn't necessarily that your team have missed a call, but that's how it can actually appear if you don't understand the system. And then the
yeah,
poor practice managers, who's going to actually be overseeing this? Who's going to be the person that's actually looking at the report, seeing what it's telling you, but actually
Yeah.
knowing the true picture and then the action plan of what's going to happen to actually put things right.
Yeah. I want to just kind of change the direction a little bit if it's okay. So, I think, well, together we've all kind of articulated a clear picture of what we are seeing in 2026. Is it going to be a whole load easier to kind of start from scratch, build the right systems and the right infrastructure in place with a squat practice? So I think there's definitely a huge amount of kind of messaging out there that kind of appeals to perhaps an associate who's looking at their first practice. You don't have to deal with annoying lawyers and annoying accountants to acquire practice. Pay a healthy £1 million plus for someone else's kind of goodwill. be much, much cheaper to set up a squat, wouldn't it? I'll start with you, Luke. How would you start to position a squat? What's your thoughts on that?
My first thought, so when I look at when we run diagnostics for any practice, whether an existing practice, someone looking to acquire a practice or a squat, is we look at fundamentally we look at the demographics and socioeconomic profile of the area. We look at what footfall could be because still walk-ins and are very important for any practice. And then we look at what the competition is. Is there space for that practice, and what would their positioning be to compete and stand out? That's one thing. That's the kind of marketing fundamentals you do when you look at it. But then building a squat is an investment. It's like any startup. Have to be fully invested. It's really difficult. It can be enjoyable if you're the type of person that enjoys that kind of challenge, but it's no easy ride. It's certainly not as easy as it may have been, a number of years ago. And you've got to want to do it, and you've got to enjoy doing it like that because it is. I think it takes a long time to climb out of the to get the practice ready, to go
Yeah.
open the door, get the team together, open the doors, and then start acquiring patients.
Yeah, well, to kind of add context to that as well, a lot of what we talk about is kind of how many new patients you need. Like, there
Mm.
could well be some patients that migrate over from your associate roles, et cetera, et cetera. I think the trouble is that's not usually enough, is it?
No, no, it's not enough at all.
Not, not even close. What are your thoughts on squat practices then, Tracy? Would that be a good idea in 2026?
Think from first thing is they'd have to have all their marketing place first because I can't do anything unless the phone is ringing and the email is pinging because we've got nobody to talk to. So the first
Yeah,
thing is they've got to have all of that in place. The next thing is it from the team's point of view, as long as you've got the recruitment structure correct and you're attracting the right people, it does become an easier because typically when people join a new business, they understand that they have to work in that business's working ways.
yeah,
But even if you've got an associate dentist that's done um, a new patient exam in a particular way and it's very rushed and the patient's not involved in that, then if the training doesn't happen, then nothing's going to change. So you've got to get the recruitment strategy right. And then it's about the induction, the amount of practices that just don't have an induction
Mm.
is very alarming, and especially for associate dentists that when I'm doing training and coaching with them, they go, "We've never had any of this." I've had people go, "Oh, I'm doing this course and I'm doing it for 12 months and it's great and there's an element of communication, so I'm not sure I need so much help." Oh, hang on a minute, let me get a pen and a pad, and then writing all this stuff down. Um, so your recruitment and your training, but before any of that, as Luke says, um, you've got to get the marketing right.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many. But there's we work with people that have set up squats. They're a few years in now, and uh, and we've spoken to many people as well about it. And the one consistent message I often hear is, "It's really hard. I'm here till 10 o'clock every night doing. I have to
yeah,
do all of these jobs because you're the owner.
yeah,
And you're owning a squat that you're building as
yeah.
well. So you've got to go in eyes wide open and as Tracy says, do everything properly, follow the process. There are no shortcuts. If you do that right, you've got a chance of success. But you have to do that. You don't just open the doors and everyone's happy and you've got people coming in all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, to add some context to it, I think it's questionable if you're building a one or two surgery squat. You appreciate you might only open a certain number of the surgeries to start with, but you've got to be planning for an element of scale to it,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
you're going to be requiring probably triple digits of new patients per month. So there's a serious requirement to gain some kind of market position quite quickly there. Great. Well, so I mean, are we positive still for 2026? I think we're still positive. I think we're just kind of pragmatic and realistic, I suppose, about what's required to survive in 2026. Do you have a finishing comment, Tracy, for how people can position themselves better?
I think it's just a case they've got to have the right setups. They've got to get away from this mindset that I've got an Xbox, I've brought something, gonna plug it in, and
Yeah,
it's gonna run. It takes work,
yeah.
and it's there are no quick fixes.
It will pay dividends.
Yeah, I agree.
Luke, your thoughts for people to help improve their 2026?
Yeah, I think it's building your visibility, and it's not just by using one channel or what's trendy at the time. It is the old principles of marketing applied. Build your brand, position it, and build visibility because they all work together and
Yeah,
support each other. All of those channels drive inquiries in different ways. One might be about, you know, recognition and that brand awareness, so then they're familiar with you when they come across you in another environment or when they're looking for treatment. All of those things are really important, and I think it's going to be a challenging year, but there's definitely, people still need dentistry, and
mm,
there's still high demand for cosmetic, orthodontics and implants, but you've got to get your messaging right.
well, thank you very much. Thank you both. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it
See you
and hope
soon.
it helps
Enjoyed
people.
that.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.